Hello folks, this is Sullla once again. Welcome to a review for patch 4.14. This is the Gnar patch for League of Legends. This patch came out about 2 days ago as I'm recording this, but this is the first time I had a chance to sit down and actually record some footage for this. It's a relatively small patch. The biggest change is the introduction of Gnar, the missing link. So I'll spend the first part of the video talking about what I think about him and then go through the remainder of the champion changes and other stuff that's going on, but the biggest thing is the introduction of this new champion. They do not provide any information on Gnar here on the official League of Legends patch note page, so I went ahead and pulled it up through the League of Legends wiki. So let's take a look at Gnar. I was actually kind of hoping that they'd pronounce his name Gnar, but the G is just silent. It's apparently just Gnar, according to the Champion Spotlight. His base stats are here. Again, the big thing about Gnar is you've probably seen the Champion Spotlight. He switches back and forth between Mini Gnar and what's the other one called? Mega Gnar. And in one, he's like a tiny little Yordle who looks a little bit like a prehistoric version of Teemo. And in the other one, he's a big monster, basically. And the trick for this particular champion is that you can't control when he shifts back and forth. All of the other form-shifting champions, you can decide when you want to go from one form to the other, whether that's Nidalee, who is sort of the first one, down to all the other ones. But Gnar, you do not get a choice. After, when he uses his abilities, he gains Rage. When he hits 100 Rage, he transforms into Mega Gnar. After 5 seconds. Whether you want to or not, you'll be switching into Mega Gnar. And I can imagine that there will be some situations where you don't want to switch into Mega Gnar. You can kind of tell the base statistics by how you play these. Mini Gnar is fast and ranged and fragile. Gets bonus movement speed for transforming. The base movement speed is 325. That's actually really slow. That's the slowest movement speed in the game. That's the movement speed for Nautilus, for example. And Mini Gnar gains bonus movement speed. It looks like it's 10 at level 1, and it gains up to 25 at level 16, it would be my guess. So he gains bonus movement speed, gains bonus attack range. It's 245 plus 5 times Gnar's level. So that's 400 to 485. Hopefully the tooltip, well, scaling currently unknown, whatever. But the tooltip's helpful for this one. So he has 400 to 485 range. He gains 5 range per level. Keep in mind that that's not a lot of range. 400 range is quite short. I mean, it's not melee, but it's quite short. Sivir, who has like the shortest range of any of the AD carries, she has 500 range. So even at level 18, you do not even have Sivir's attack range. This is why Gnar is a terrible AD carry, or marksman as it says here. Do not play Gnar as an AD. Gnar is meant to be a top laner. And he also gains bonus attack speed, 5.5 times Gnar's level. So Mini Gnar is fast and fragile, and he attacks at range, and he's basically like a very annoying Teemo kind of champion. It's kind of the best description. Mega Gnar gains bonus health. What is it? 30 plus 40 times Gnar's level. So that's quite a bit, actually. At max rank, hold on, at level 18, I'll do the calculation here real quick. That is 700 health at level. He gets 750 health at level 18. That's a lot of bonus health. That's almost a Warmog's full of bonus health at rank 18. So he gets a lot of health, armor and magic resist, 2 times Gnar's level. So starts out at, gets up to 36 armor and MR when he's level 18. Health regen per 5, same thing, 2 times Gnar's level. Base attack damage 4 plus 2 times Gnar's level. So at max, at level 18, he'll get 40 base attack damage. Anyway, Mega Gnar, the big thing, as far as I can see, is the health. He gets a huge bonus to health. Let's look at the base health stats up here. Base health is not that low. Not terribly low. The health per level is a bit low, only plus 65 per level. That's a bit low. But 430 is not like super duper low. So anyway, Mega Gnar, as you might imagine, Mega Gnar's biggest downfall is he's very slow. 325 movement speed, as I said. That's equivalent to Nautilus. It's the slowest movement speed in the game. So Mega Gnar is much, much more slow than Mini Gnar. I saw one person point this out on stream. Mostly melee champions are faster than ranged champions, because otherwise how would they ever catch up to ranged champions and be able to offset the fact that they're melee instead of ranged? But Gnar is the opposite. He's actually faster when he's in his ranged form. He's slower when he's in his melee form. And so that you can kind of tell his biggest weakness is therefore getting kited in the Mega Gnar form. Mini Gnar is just super fragile. Lower health, not anything in terms of armor and MR. And you really have to kite as Mini Gnar. But anyway, let's look at the actual abilities. So Mini Gnar, his bread and butter skill is his Q, boomerang throw, range 1100. Can see the cooldown. Cooldown looks like it's super duper high. because it starts at 20 seconds, but that's due to the way this skill works. Gnar throws his boomerang, deals physical damage in a straight line, slows all enemies' hits. Boomerang will then slowly come to an end, travel back towards Gnar. Enemies beyond the first take only 50% damage, and an enemy can only be damaged once. So this is not like a Sivir boomerang blade. You can only hit each target one time, and only the first target hit takes full damage. That's this number up here. Everything else takes half damage. So the first target hit is the key one. This is also a relatively slow-moving skill shot. I've seen it in action on the game footage, and it doesn't travel that fast. The returning boomerang will accelerate. It can travel quite far, up to 2,500 units, so it can go way behind Gnar. However, you generally want to catch it because it reduces the cooldown by 60%, and that's a lot. So even though this looks like a low cooldown, if you catch the boomerang on its return trip, it works out to about a 5-second cooldown, so this is pretty spammable overall. And of course, it does not cost mana to use. Gnar does not have mana. He's solely cooldown based. So you want to obviously try to catch the boomerang in most circumstances. I mean, I'm sure there's some circumstance where you'll try to do a backwards toss or something, but most of the time you'll want to catch it. So deals physical damage. The damage is pretty low, 150, but it has a nice ratio, plus 100% AD. So it's a nice AD ratio, but the damage itself is pretty low. Also applies a slow, although it's a fairly minor slow. 35% at max rank, only 15% at level 1. This is pretty much the skill that Gnar players will max first because it's his best harassing tool, and it can be used for wave clear as well. It's not a great wave clearing tool, but you can use it for that. In Mega Gnar form, it's basically the same thing, still 1100 range, same cooldown. Gnar throws a boulder that when it hits an enemy deals physical damage and slows, and if he picks up the boulder, the cooldown is reduced by 60%. So instead of a little boomerang, he tosses a boulder. The boulder can deal area of effect damage, but it's basically the same thing. Has a slightly higher damage, and it has a better AD ratio, plus 120% AD. And by the way, that's a pretty high ratio. I think this is a bit high too, 100% AD ratio on there, but Gnar probably will not be someone who's just building straight damage. Can't really afford to do that on most top laners. Anyway, relatively simple skill here. Some of the later ones get more complicated. W Hyper, Mini Gnar, in this form, it is a passive. Every third consecutive attack or spell, so can be triggered by Boomerang Throw, can be triggered by Hop. Every third consecutive attack or spell on the same target grants Gnar 30% bonus movement speed that decays over 3 seconds and deals additional magic damage equal to a base amount plus a percentage. So this is most similar to things like Vayne's Silver Bolts with Vi's Denting Blows. If you can hit a target 3 times, then you'll deal bonus magic damage. You can see it right here. The magic damage itself is quite low. It does have a 1-to-1 AP ratio, although Gnar probably won't build much AP, but I think Gnar is a champion that Trinity Force would be a really good item on. I haven't seen people playing Gnar yet, but it just seems like he's a Trinity Force type champion, so the 100% AP ratio is nice. And then it deals a percentage of target's max health. I think this is probably a little high, 14% max health. If Gnar starts to get nerfed, expect them to go after this, because it feels a little bit high. And of course, there's a damage cap for monsters. Again, every 3 hits, so you deal bonus magic damage. It also gives Mini Gnar 30% bonus movement speed. So this is what Gnar needs to do to kite. Hit somebody 3 times in a row, and he gets a sudden burst of movement speed that decays over 3 seconds. He actually gets even more than this. As he ranks up his ultimate, it goes up to not 30%, goes up to 45, then 60, then 75%. Also, this is not like Vayne's Silver Bolts. You can have this active on multiple enemies at once. So you're not limited to just hitting one target. You can be hitting multiple people, and the hyper passive will stack up on multiple targets at once. What this really means is Gnar is really good at kiting people. He is obnoxiously good at kiting people because it's very easy for him to proc this hyper passive over and over and over again. It's like Teemo being able to use his move quick just by attacking you 3 times in a row. So this is going to be annoying. And Gnar also gets the same bonus movement speed when he transforms back into Mini Gnar from Mega Gnar. So yeah, Mini Gnar, very fast, very good at kiting. In Mega Gnar form, this is not a passive, this is actually an active ability. Gnar stands on his back legs, slams his fist into the ground, deals physical damage, stuns enemies in a large area in front of him. So you lose the kiting ability, you lose the Silver Bolts proc thing, but you gain an ability to stun enemies in an area of effect or in front of him for 1.25 seconds. It's not a long stun, but it is a stun, and stuns are always good. Plus, again, this has a 100% AD ratio. Still, this is not an ability you'd pick for the damage, you'd pick it for the CC. So as we said, in Mega Gnar form, Gnar has very good crowd control. Finally here, Hop, and let me go through what this ability does first, but this is sort of a classic example of Riot over-tuning a new champion to make them good. Alright, range 475, cooldown, so the range is just about the same as Flash. Keep that in mind if you're curious. Right about the same range as Flash. Cooldown 18 seconds down to 12. Mini Gnar, active Gnar leaps to a location, gains bonus attack speed for 3 seconds. If Gnar lands on any unit, ally, enemy, or neutral creep, he will bounce off it, traveling further, deals physical damage, and briefly slows the unit if it was an enemy. Blah, blah, blah. Slow duration and percentage not specified, but target reveals it's a 60% slow for 1/2 second. So, here is League of Mobility Creep. Gnar's a new champion. Well, he has to have a gap closer. Every new champion has to have a gap closer. This is his escape skill. He jumps 475 range. If he hits anything, again, anything, an ally, an enemy, a neutral monster, he will then bounce another 475 units. So that in and of itself would be really good. But here's where Riot has overtuned their new champion, putting too much stuff in the kit, which they do with all their new champions now. They want to make their new champions good. So not only is this a 475 jump that you can jump again if you land on anything, it also grants an attack speed bonus. And it's a slow. It's like, what? Why is this a... Like, I could see the slow because he's bouncing off an enemy, but why is this also a 60% attack speed bonus? There's no reason for there to be an attack speed bonus on this ability. I mean, it doesn't even make sense thematically. Why would he get attack speed for this? It's ridiculous. So, as I've said, a classic example of Riot overtuning a new champion, putting too many things on one ability. Yeah, I mean, it's a double jump. It's also deals damage. Oh, and it deals a percentage of max health. Deals damage, percent of max health. Also grants bonus attack speed and slows. What the heck? So anyway, ridiculous. But there's no reason for there to be an attack speed buff on this skill whatsoever. Anyway, we'll see. Maybe Gnar will prove to be overpowered, maybe not. But this is classic putting too much stuff on one ability. Riot seems to like to do this. So Mini Gnar has a slow on his Q and another slow on his E. Anyway, in Mega Gnar form, it's very similar. Gnar leaps to a location, deals physical damage on landing. Enemies in the center of the impact are slowed briefly. So again, physical damage, percent of Gnar's max health. If Crunch is the ability used to trigger the Rage Gene, in other words, if this is the ability used to trigger the transformation, Gnar can still perform Hop's Bounce. So normally, when you're in Mega Gnar form, you don't get to hop off something, but if you use it to transform, you can bounce off something and still apply Crunch's area of effect on both jumps, although enemies are only damaged once. So, you can get the basic idea of how you want to play Gnar. When you transform, it's most effective to use his E to transform because you get the double jumps. You double jump in as you transform. You smack people with his W, with the wallop, hit them with the boulder, and hit them with his ultimate as well. So here's what this does. In mini form, it doesn't do anything. Just you get more bonus movement speed from Hyper. As I said, it starts at 30% bonus movement speed, goes up to 75%. But otherwise, it doesn't do anything. In Mega Gnar form, the ultimate has an active. Gnar knocks all nearby enemies in the specified direction, deals physical damage, and slows them for a short duration. Once again, a lot of stuff here. So he knocks all enemies in the specified direction. It's kind of like Alistar's headbutt. That's the best comparison I can see. He kind of shoves people near him in the direction he's facing. Deals physical damage. Also slows them by 45%. And if he manages to get them knocked into terrain, they take 50% increased damage, and instead of being slowed, they're stunned. So again, very similar to an Alistar headbutt. Knocks people back, but it's not just one target. It's an AoE knockback, so he can knock multiple people back. If he gets them into the wall, deals 50% more damage and 50% higher AD ratio, and it stuns instead of slow. So you get the idea. Double jump in as you transform, smack them into terrain. You can get an AoE up to 1.75 second stun, area of effect, and then you can use Wallop, which is also an area of effect stun. So you can get up to 3 seconds of stun if you time this properly. Obviously, that's really, really good. Really, really good in team fighting. So how does Gnar stack up overall? I'm afraid I haven't seen him played too much yet, and admittedly he's been out for 2 days, so it's still kind of early. People are figuring out builds, mastery and rune setups. People are still getting practice. It feels like he should be really good because he has what seems like it would be a really good laning phase, in the sense that he's got this range, he can kite people, he's going to be really hard to gank in top lane with his ability to double jump with the hop. Feels like he'll be quite good there. And he also has amazing team fighting presence in Mega Gnar form. Like I said, basically he's got a gap closer to jump in, smash everybody into a wall, then he's got an area of effect stun on his wallop. I mean, overall, it feels pretty good. Now, the one caveat to that is he can't transform whenever he wants. If you could just transform back and forth between the two forms, this guy would be disgustingly broken. However, you can't control when he transforms. And I have seen people playing, in the limited amount of footage I've seen, people saying, I really wish I didn't have to transform right now. Actually, with a lot more profanity because they're on live stream, but you get the idea. In particular, people seem to want to be in mini Gnar form most of the time. The only time you really want to be in mega Gnar form is for a team fight. Otherwise, you pretty much want to be in mini Gnar form. So the fact that you can't control the transformation is the one thing that seems like it would balance him. Now, that said, I think he's still overtuned. I think there's too much in this kit. There's way too much percent of targets max health. I see that way too many places. I think the E skill in particular, as I said, has too much overtuning. It just feels like there's a little bit too much in this kit right now. And in particular, I think that the fact that Hyper can be applied, the passive can be applied to as many enemies as you want at one point in time. The fact that at level 16, it's a 75% movement speed bonus. Like, how are you ever going to catch up to this little Yordle if he's getting that much bonus movement speed every couple of seconds, and he's got his double jump on hop to get out of ganks? I just don't see how you're ever going to catch this guy. He's just going to kite and kite and kite, and you'll never catch him. Plus, of course, he's got crazy crowd control and team fight. So on paper, he looks pretty darn good to me. He looks like he would fit very well into the current top lane meta. Played similarly to Nidalee, except with a much better team fighting presence. That's the way it looks like to me. The way I can see. That's probably the most accurate comparison. Like Nidalee, except you can't transform, but with much better team fight presence than Nidalee. Anyway, we'll have to see. It will be interesting to see what the pros make of this. But that's my first take, just by looking at the numbers and from like one day of play that I've seen on stream. Okay, so that's the main biggest change in this patch is adding Gnar. Everything else is pretty minor. Corki, no changes to Corki. They just put soon here. This is the joke that Corki gets buffed every year right before right before the World Championships. Corki always gets buffed, so we'll see if they actually do anything there. Corki is still being played, at least in North America. I don't think he's been played as much in Europe, so hopefully they'll just leave Corki alone. He seems okay. Gragas, new recommended items, making Lichbane a recommended item. That's the new Gragas' core item. It's Rod of Ages Lichbane is his core build. And this is kind of a bug fix. Gragas now always travels the full distance in the direction of the cast. Still stops on first target he hits. Hard to say if that's a nerf or a buff, in all honesty. It could be either, honestly, depending on the circumstances. But it looks like it's intended to be a bug fix. We'll have to see. But now he always travels the full distance on his body slams. So that, as I said, it could be good or bad depending on the situation. Kassadin has gotten a nerf. I don't think this is that bad of a nerf. Basically, it means the reset cooldown on his Rift Walk. When Kassadin uses his Rift Walk, it costs more mana each time he uses it. Now it takes 20 seconds before that resets as opposed to 12 seconds. Again, I don't think that's going to change that much. It is a nerf, but people really enjoy playing Kassadin, and he's still quite strong. I'm not sure this is going to be enough to stop people from playing and banning Kassadin, at least in the pros. Yeah, because he only needs to Rift Walk like 2 or 3 times to do what he usually wants to do. Still, it is a nerf. He has to spend more time out of combat before he can Rift Walk again. So it's modest nerf. I guess I'll put it that way, modest. Kayle, due to a bug, Kayle was temporarily receiving less attack speed per level than she was supposed to. That's been fixed. It's already been reverted, apparently. Kog'Maw is getting nerfed here. Again, in the last patch, Tristana and Kog'Maw were the 2 clear top choice ADs. It was kind of a problem that Trist and Kog'Maw had these insane late games, and they also had really good laning phases too. That's kind of a problem when these champs that are supposed to dominate late game also dominate in the laning phase. So Tristana got nerfed in the last patch. Kog'Maw gets nerfed in this one. They lowered his base movement speed from 330 to 325. Again, that's the minimum movement speed in the game, so he has the slowest movement speed of any champion in the game, tied with a couple of other champions for that. It's a smart nerf to do because it highlights Kog'Maw's vulnerability, which is that he has no gap closers, no escape skills, so it kind of exacerbates his weaknesses while keeping most of his strengths intact, which is kind of a smart way to do a nerf. What did they do? They changed the particles on his E, on his Void Ooze. It looks a little bit better. They did a graphical update. It looks much better. I've seen it in game. And they did put a relatively minor nerf to his Living Artillery, his ultimate. Bonus base magic damage to champions cut, 125% down to 100%. That is pretty noticeable. Basically, Cogmalls were shoving people around in laning phase just by hitting level 6, getting their ultimate, and then using Phage procs and Sheen procs as they were building Trinity, or after they completed Trinity. And they were just bullying people around with that. So a smart move here. That's not really the way Cogmal was intended to be played, was to just get Sheen and Phage and just bully people out of lane with the use of his Living Artillery. So that also seems like a smart nerf. Overall, if you're going to nerf Cog, and he did deserve to be nerfed, this is a good way to do it. Give a thumbs up to this. It's not... Sometimes the nerfs are really stupid, but this was a good way to go about doing it. Lulu, they updated the tooltip on Whimsy. This apparently was a nerf that had already gone through, but the tooltip had not been updated. So the polymorph lasts 1.25 to 2.25 seconds. They just updated the tooltip. Maokai, if you've been watching the LCS playoffs, the European ones have been going on this week and last week, you may have noticed that Maokai was permanently banned in every single game. I think he snuck through in like one game, but he's basically been a permaban. Maokai was, he kind of emerged after his latest rework, not as a jungler, but as this incredibly tough to kill top laner. And combined with nerfs to a bunch of the other popular top laners, he really emerged as an almost unstoppable force. His early game was weak, but his team fighting was just incredible. As it says right here, Maokai's a pretty cool dude, but when you have a magical tree with a 100% uptime on his ultimate, doesn't allow for many opportunities for counterplay. We may have overshot slightly on his base power. It's like, why, yes, you did overshoot on his base power. So a fairly sizable set of nerfs here. W, the Twisted Advance, this is what Maokai's were maxing first. Oh, no, was this? No, I can't remember. I think they were maxing his Q first, but Twisted Advance was doing quite good work there. Anyway, they cut it from 15% max health down to 13% max health. They also cut the AP ratio. Instead of 4% max health per AP down to 3% max health per AP ratio. So the AP ratio has been gone down by 1%. And this was probably more significant. They added a maximum duration to the Maokai ult. You can only run it for 10 seconds now. Now, again, that might sound sort of like, well, most team fights are going to be over in 10 seconds anyway. But I can't tell you how many times I saw Maokai's just running their ult for so long. When they changed the ult so that it followed him instead of sticking in one place, it just meant that Maokai would run his ult forever in team fights, and the amount of damage it was blocking was really incredible. It made Maokai just insanely strong in team fights, with, of course, his passive, where he's healing on basically every auto attack in a team fight, made this guy just about unkillable once he had his Rod of Ages and his Spirit Visage. After that, it was like, well, we can't hurt Maokai anymore. He'll just tank endlessly. So this is a smart move to mean that his ult cannot be up 100% of the time, which is, it felt like he'd had up almost permanently before. That said, Maokai will he probably still get played. He's still great for any team fighting comp, but maybe he won't be the permaban choice he's been in recent patch iterations, or at least this last patch. For Morgana, they are cutting the power of support Morgana. They really hit Black Shield here. They've cut the value, base value very hard, from 95 down to 70 at rank 1. Now, as you scale it up, it goes back almost to the former value. It goes to 350 instead of 355. So at rank 5, it's just about where it was before. But this means that at rank 1, Black Shield is much weaker. It's, what, about 35–40% weaker at rank 1. So as it says, the idea is Morganas will have to choose between leveling Dark Binding, which is what Morgs have traditionally done, and leveling Black Shield. And that's a smart nerf to do here. I think Morgs will probably still max Dark Binding, but in some situations they might need to rank up Black Shield first, or maybe put like 2 points into the skill, because it's pretty weak at rank 1 as of right now. There is also a nerf to Morgana's Soul Shackle. This is a little bit more minor. They've cut 25 damage at all ranks from both the base damage and when the ult times out. So, what is it? 175 down to 150 at rank 1, 325 down to 300 at rank 3. And of course, Morgana's ult ticks twice, once when you put it on for the first time, and then after 3 seconds when the Soul Shackles go off. So it's 50 damage less if you include both of the ticks on the Soul Shackle. Overall, pretty sizable nerfs, but Morgana was a top-tier support, so they're pretty well, I think they're pretty fair, and I actually think that the supports are in fairly good shape after this. Now that Braum's been nerfed, Thresh has gotten another nerf, Nami got a relatively minor nerf. It feels like with that, plus some of the changes to other supports, they recently buffed Janna, they did the rework for Sona. I think the supports are in fairly good shape at the moment, at least until itemization changes again. So hopefully that will help. Orianna, they nerfed Orianna's base damage. Now this might not seem like a lot from 47 down to 41, but what this means is Orianna now has the lowest, I believe she has the lowest base attack damage of anyone in the game. 41 is very low for base attack damage, very, very low. What this means is her passive, where she has that AP ratio on her passive, that means that she needs that just to get back to like ordinary damage. So it basically means that her passive doesn't really do anything until she starts to stack up a lot of ability power. What this does is it means Orianna's early game laning is much weaker. If you've got like that Orianna versus Kassadin or Orianna versus Fizz matchup or something, the auto attack harass is much weaker from Orianna. Or Orianna versus Yasuo is another one. A lot of people were picking Orianna against melee champs in mid and then just using her auto attacks to harass them out of lane. Yeah, it even says here to give her opponents, especially melee opponents, range. So Orianna has been very popular recently. This is it's a relatively modest nerf, but it really does hurt her early game laning. It's probably a smart nerf because Orianna has great late game scaling. She's got 5 AP ratios. Her shockwave is amazing in teamfights. So hurting her early laning was kind of a smart way to do this. I think that Orianna's still going to get picked a lot, but it does mean she'll be weaker in lane. Next up, Rengar. They are nerfing Rengar pretty badly here. A lot of people looked at this and said, this is the nerf intended to save North America at the World Championships from picking Rengar and losing, because all of the NA LCS teams, it's just like an insta loss when they pick Rengar. I believe he's 3 wins and 11 losses in North American LCS. But the NA teams just keep picking that guy, so a lot of people on Reddit were saying, please nerf Rengar, save North American teams from themselves, stop them from picking Rengar. So anyway, these are some fairly sizable Rengar nerfs. This one's pretty minor. Rengar has increased vision range with the head of Kha'Zix. This is the hidden passive if he kills Kha'Zix at like level 16. This is almost never going to appear, so it's not that big a deal. Thrill of the Hunt, though, got nerfed pretty sizably. Warning indicator now appears even if Rengar is in the fog of war while stealth. In other words, if Rengar is within 1250 range of any opponent, they will be notified. So he can't just hide in fog of war. Enemies will still get the pop-up from his ult when he goes stealth. They also increase the range indicator from 1000 units to 1250, and they also increase the cooldown as well, from 120 up to 150. Those are major nerfs to Rengar. It probably means Rengar will not be played anymore because he no longer can jump on someone and assassinate them with no warning. Now, that said, jumping on someone and assassinating them with no warning was not particularly fun to play against. You're just kind of walking around in lane or in the jungle or something, and suddenly Rengar's there and he jumps on you and you're dead. And yeah, that's not really a lot of fun. It's pretty terrible. I mean, it's sort of the classic example of what Riot likes to call toxic gameplay. So Rengar's not going to be able to do that anymore, which means he's not going to be played anymore. So Rengar's probably not going to appear at Worlds once this patch goes through. So saving North America from themselves. Syndra here, they fixed a bug where Syndra's ultimate was still dealing damage to targets who had become untargetable via Zanya's Hourglass or other skills, so that's a bug fix. Apparently they fixed a bug where Flay would sometimes not move opponents. This is a long-standing bug. Hopefully it's finally been tracked down. Xerath, they have changed it so that the delay between shots of his ult do not scale with cooldown reduction. It is fixed at a half second between individual shots. So that's a fairly minor nerf, but it is still a nerf to Xerath. Hopefully they will figure out whatever bugs were plaguing Xerath and we might see him again. He was not able to be played in Super Week in the LCS because he was bugged for some reason. Hopefully they've managed to fix that. And Zed has gotten a modest buff, but a buff nonetheless. When Zed uses Deathmark, his ultimate, he now dashes behind them instead of in front of them. That's a good thing. It means he's behind his target. It's harder for them to get away. And Zed now ignores unit collisions while the Deathmark is active on a target, so he can run through minions. Again, that's kind of minor, but it helps. It's easier for him to get to his target. This means that Zed will probably appear in the competitive scene. He kind of dropped out for a while there, but it was not even so much due to nerfs on Zed. It was more due to buffing certain summoners. Exhaust got buffed. Heal got really buffed. Heal got super duper buffed. And Ignite got nerfed. So, you know, it meant that assassins dropped out of the meta. They couldn't do their job. It was much harder for them to kill. That was the era when you had all the utility mages going mid. Lulu, Soraka, Orianna, one of these scaling utility mages in mid every game. Why was that? Well, Ignite got nerfed. heal got buffed. That meant utility mages took over. But Riot has largely gotten rid of those changes. They clearly overbuffed heal. They've reverted that. They clearly overbuffed exhaust. They've reverted that change as well. And Ignite, I don't think they've affected Ignite, but Ignite's slowly starting to appear. They overbuffed Teleport to a ridiculous extent. Teleport has been, some of that power has been removed from Teleport, but it's still stronger than it used to be. And that's why we still see so many teleports in these games. But the game is starting to be more viable for Assassins, and I think we'll see Zed played in the upcoming events once this patch goes through, because this definitely helps him. Alright, that's just about it. Minor changes, buffing Sanguine Blade, but doesn't appear on Summoner's Rift, so I can't say too much about it. They updated the buttons in the post-game lobby. They made them look nicer. I've seen that on stream as well. They do look a little bit nicer. Suggested player behavior. We're introducing suggested players. The initial list include players from your recent victories, as well as any premium maids you queued together with. Over time, will be expanded to include groups like honorable players, potential friends, and friends of friends. So it will suggest players to fill out pre-made lobbies. That's kind of nice. Chat restrictions, blah, blah, blah. They are making the chat restriction system more accurate instead of... so they're trying to get rid of back-to-back restriction waves so that it's not you get a chat restriction and then when it wears off, you get another chat restriction. That's not really a good way to do it. In other words, a set of 30 chat restrictions instead of 3 sets of 10. Trying to fix that. Custom lobby spectating, you can now have 4 spectators in the custom lobby instead of 2. That'll be helpful if we ever go back to doing the custom YouTube games on YouTube night. We'll see, maybe someday. Would have been helpful back in the past when we could only have 2 people spectate. They've increased the patching speed. The game installs faster, patches faster. That's nice. Removed 700 megabytes of obsolete audio files, old music that they're not using. That's probably the winter music and the Halloween map for Summoner's Rift, which don't exist anymore. Bug fixes, fixed bugs where the game clock would occasionally become desynchronized, causing buffs to appear to spawn too early. Pink words are pink again. They slightly changed the look of the pink words. Relic Shield no longer executes Heimerdinger's turrets. I'm sure that affects a whole lot of games, but good to know. Quinn's E no longer causes weird text to appear, and Zillion's Time Bomb no longer pops Spell Shield effects. And here are the skins that are coming out. A lot of people seem to like the Arcade Misfortune skin. Seems to be a popular one already. So, as I said, the Gnar patch, the biggest thing is Gnar coming out. No massive changes to champions. Minor buffs and nerfs. Riot doesn't want to change too much because they are getting quite close to Worlds. Worlds are going to start in about a month, and they will finish in about 2 months as I record this video. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching this video. Hope that delay of a couple days wasn't too bad. I try to be able to get at least a little information on what's happening in the new patch before I put this out, but this was as much just not having time to do the patch notes as anything. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I guess that's it. I don't have anything more to say. Have a good weekend. See you guys again soon. Take care.